Radium. It seemed like a miracle product. After its discovery in 1889, it was put in practically everything: chicken feed, butter, water, face cream, spas. But it soon revealed an ugly dark side. At factories in Illinois, New Jersey, and Connecticut, women who lined watch dials with radium paint mysteriously fell ill. They had been slowly poisoned by the radium in the paint. These women had to fight to gain recognition and compensation from the disdainful company. Over decades, they battled through sickness and death to receive the acknowledgement they deserved. Their struggles led to legislation for safety in the workplace and further research into the dangers of radiation. From beyond the grave, these women saved the lives of countless workers across America. In 1898, Marie and Pierre Curie discovered a pitch-blende substance called radium. The rare element was highly radioactive. Its key isotope, radium-226, had a half-life of 1,600 years. The slow decay released energy. But in order to obtain even a minuscule amount of radium, the Curies had to stir vats of the pitch-blende material. Immediately, Marie Curie put the element to use destroying cancer cells. The shiny substance caught the eye of the public. In the United States, companies use radium to sell just about anything, although not every product actually contained any radium at all. Experts claimed that radium could cure everything from rheumatism to aging. It was everywhere. 1917. America was thrust into World War I. Thousands of men were sent overseas. Many women took up the jobs left behind to support the war effort. In Orange, New Jersey, the United States Radium Corporation hired over 200 women to paint watch dials with Undark, a radioluminescent paint. The watches were illuminated enough for American soldiers to read in the trenches at night without being seen by the enemies. In order to obtain a fine enough point to draw the tiny numbers, the women would practice lip dipping, bringing the tip of their brush to their lips. The girls felt blessed to be working with radium. After all, everywhere they looked, there seemed to be another thing radium could cure. The young women would paint their eyelids, nails, and even teeth. After the war, the demand for radium-coated watch faces erupted. New USRC shops were set up across New Jersey, New York, and Connecticut. Across the country, Radium Dial Company, a competing corporation, was founded in Ottawa, Illinois. Each company offered women good pay for that era, an average of $20 a week, and access to the health-giving radium. It seemed like a dream. But the dream soon dissipated. Amelia Molly Maggia of New Jersey was the first to get sick. She and her sisters had all gotten jobs at USRC to help support their family. After 4 years of working in the factory, Molly had to quit. Her health had inexplicably deteriorated. She had abruptly lost weight and was showing signs of anemia. Worst of all, she was having chronic jaw aches. The dentist was able to remove a piece of her jaw with just his hands. Over the next months, Molly had more teeth removed and constantly bled from her mouth. In 1922, Molly Maggia died at the age of only 25. By 1925, 4 other young women in Orange had died, and many more had begun to show symptoms. It was strange. The women working at USRC had been told that the paint was harmless. In Orange and Waterbury, Connecticut, the company had brought in a doctor, Frederick B. Flynn, who assured the women they were in perfect health, despite suspecting otherwise. In another room in the same factory, men working on the paint were forced to wear protective gear. But the women were disposable. The lies couldn't dismiss the fact that these workers were getting sick rapidly. Once ingested, radium enters the bones, cleverly disguised as calcium. The alpha and gamma rays knock the bones from the inside out, weakening them and often causing anemia. Yet the USRC insisted the illnesses were in no way associated with the company or the radium. They could afford to lose workers, but they couldn't afford to lose profit.
So the women started getting sick and the doctors didn't know what was wrong with them. And when people started to say, oh, it could be the radium, that was widely discredited because, of course, the received wisdom was it was not only safe but beneficial to health.
Alongside medical examiner Harrison Martland, 5 of the dial painters from Orange sued the USRC in 1927. Grace Fryer, Edna Hussman, Catherine Schaub, and 2 of Molly Maggia's sisters, Albina Larice and Quinta McDonald. Grace had spent 2 years trying to find a lawyer to take the case. Even when they did find a lawyer, it took years to have a trial date set. Meanwhile, their health continued to deteriorate. Their bones were brittle and fragile. They could barely get across a room. Though both Martland and toxicologist Alexander Gettler had proved the women were riddled with radium, their points were null. The New Jersey statute of limitations for filing a work injury was 2 years. It didn't matter that radium poisoning symptoms often did not arise for years, or that many of the women could physically no longer work. The USRC demanded that the case was void. The USRC eventually settled the case, giving the girls much less than they had asked for. Each got $10,000, around $146,000 today, and a $400 annual pension. It wasn't the $250,000 they had asked for, but it was something. In Waterbury, the company discouraged lip dipping in 1925 and had it altogether banned in 1929 after the death of the third victim. After the lawsuit, lip dipping stopped in Orange as well. But the case that had been so widely reported across the East Coast seemed not to have reached Illinois. The story just seemed to repeat. As the women in New Jersey and Connecticut brought their suits to court, the women at the Radium Dial Company in Illinois, which had opened later, began to fall ill. As at USRC, the young dial painters were mesmerized with the luminescent paint. They too had been promised it was safe. After 6 years of working at the factory, Peg Looney was unwell. She suffered from anemia, her teeth were falling out, her mouth wouldn't heal, and hip pain was so extreme that her fiancé had to pull her around town in a wagon. After collapsing at work, Peg was admitted into the company hospital. The executives at Radium Dial Company knew they were poisoning their workers. They just didn't care. The company doctors told Peg's family she had diphtheria, a contagious bacterial disease, and refused to let anyone in the room with her. Days later, Peg died at the age of 24. Her family and friends were suspicious, but no attorney would take their case. In 1925, Catherine Donahue was fired because her limp was causing much talk. The young mother was showing many of the same symptoms Molly Maggia had. She was rapidly losing weight, and her jaw fell out. She was bedridden. The local doctors would not admit that her sickness was linked to radium. A Chicago doctor later identified it as radium poisoning. She, along with a few other women, sued the RDC. Their first effort was unsuccessful. When they tried again, no lawyer would take the case. Eventually, they found Leonard Grossman, who took the case pro bono. Catherine was so ill that the trial had to take place at her bedside. The women won, but the timing was wrong.
The women were filing suit in the midst of the Great Depression, and the local townspeople sided with the company. They wanted that business there. Even if it had hurt people, they didn't care. And so the women found that their communities turned against them, and the women were considered liars and cheats and frauds.
In the end, the women won a total of $10,000 to share. Some got nothing. It is estimated that 4,000 women worked at the factories collectively. By 1929, it was recorded that at least 86 women had radium-linked cancers, and 23 others had died from diseases caused by radium. Though many women and their families were not given justice by the companies, the traction their cases caught in the media brought about some beneficial changes. The marketability of radium quickly plummeted. In 1938, the FDA passed a bill updating the law they had set in place in 1906. The new act legally mandated quality and identity standards for foods, drugs, cosmetics, and medical devices, clarification of the FDA's right to conduct factory inspections, and control of product advertising. Among the items identified was Radithor, the radium-infused drink that claimed to improve health but instead sentenced users to a slow and painful death. Many of the surviving dial painting victims donated themselves to research to expand scientific understanding of radioactivity. Because of their stories, the workers of the Manhattan Project were able to take proper precaution when handling the radioactive substances. According to the U.S. Atomic Bomb Commission, if it hadn't been for those dial painters, thousands of workers might well have been, and might still be, in great danger. Today, the EPA heads 16 Superfund sites in Ottawa to clean up the toxic waste from the Radium Dial Company. Similar cleanups have also been conducted in Connecticut and New Jersey. The bodies of these young women are still riddled with radium. they will be for 1,600 years. But the strides they made for workers in America, especially women, are timeless.